Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about inequalities. Our content objective is students will be able to graph and interpret inequalities. Language objective is students will be able to state inequalities verbally, basically meaning you can read them correctly. Two, write inequalities from word phrases. And why am I learning this? Well, it's important for tomorrow when we learn how to solve inequalities. So vocabulary. Inequality is basically a mathematical sentence that contains any of these symbols. Less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or does not equal to. So quick rundown. If it's pointing to your left, this you would call is less than. One way you kind of think of it is it looks like an L. You can kind of, I know it's a far stretch, but you can kind of form this into looking like an L. So I could think of that as, oh, that's less than. This is going to be your greater than. So notice this one's pointing the opposite direction. So of course, since this is identical to this, you would call this less than or equal to. And this one here, since it's the same as this one, you would say greater than or equal to. And then last but not least, we have does not equal to. So again, please keep in mind another way you can kind of remind yourself which is which is always understand that the point of these symbols is always going to point to the smaller number. So that's another way of reading it. Okay, so here we're going to be given some examples. Our goal is to write an algebraic expression. For our first example, it says a school bus can seat at most 48 students. So I think the trickiest part about this lesson is you're going to have to think, okay, will it include, for in this case, 48, or will 48 be excluded? Because for the most part, we can understand if it can seat at most, we know it's going to be less than that, right? For sure. So now the only question is, will it also be able to seat 48 students? The answer is in this case, yes. So which means it's going to be S is less than or equal to 48. So the biggest thing is making sure we understand, is a number included or is it excluded? So for number 2, in many states, you must at least be 16 years old to obtain a driver's license. So at least means you got to be 16 years or older. So in this case, because of that, I know that 16 is also included. And because, of course, you have to be older than 16, it's going to be anything 16 or greater. So I'm going to go ahead and say A is greater than or equal to 16. So notice, if you want to do less than, you want to make sure it's pointing at that variable. But if you want to go greater than, we need to make sure it's pointing away from it. So number 3. It isn't safe to use a light bulb of more than 100 watts in many light fixtures. More than, of course, means greater than, but our question should be, okay, should it be greater than or greater than and equal to? Well, in this case, it says more than 100, which is not going to include 100. So I'm going to go ahead and say W is greater than 100. Number 4, it says no less than 250 parents attended back to school night. I think this one's one of the trickiest ones because some of you may look at this and automatically see less than and want to use the less than symbol. But it says no less than, which means it's going to be 250 or greater. So because of those reasons, I'm actually going to use the greater than symbol and equal to. So we're going to say P is greater than or equal to 250. Now at this stage, what I'd like you to do is just pause the video and go ahead and try 5 through 8 by yourself. Okay, so for number 5, it says you must be no more than 15 years old to attend a middle school dance. So it's going to be A, since they asked us to use A is less than or equal to 15. Number 6, so as not to break the sound barrier, a plane must travel below 760 miles per hour. So, because it needs to travel less than, we're going to go ahead and say S is less than 760. It can't actually be at 760, that's why it's not equal to. Number 7, children must be 48 inches tall to ride the roller coaster. So we're going to go ahead and say H is greater than 48. So notice they can't just be 48. They have to be taller. So that's why, again, we're not using the equal symbol as well. Number 8, you must have fewer than 3 tardies to get a satisfactory citizenship grade. So here we're going to go ahead and say T has to be less than 3. So it can't be equal to, it has to be less than. So common phrases that represent inequalities. So for the less than symbol, okay, we typically will hear the words fewer than or below. For the greater than symbol, we're going to often hear is more than or is above. Less than or equal to, you're going to hear is at most or is no more than. And for the greater than or equal to, you're going to often hear is at least or is no less than. So just be very careful whenever you see this no in front. Don't just assume, oh, look, I see more than, it has to be greater than, or here I see less than, it's got to be the less than symbol. You have to be very careful. So just a quick recap. For less than, you're going to see is fewer than, is below. For greater than, you're going to see is more than or is above. Is less than or equal to, you're going to see is at most or is no more than. And greater than or equal to, you're going to see is at least or is no less than. So at this point, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video and practice reading these out loud. Okay, let's go ahead and check to see if you read them correctly. For the first one, I would read it as 5 is less than 7, or you can say 5 is fewer than 7, or 5 is below 7. These are just alternatives, but typically you're going to read it as 5 is less than 7. Next one, you can read it as x is greater than negative 12. Some alternatives might be x is more than negative 12, or x is above negative 12. Next one is C is less than or equal to 3, which could be read as C is at most 3, or C is no more than 3. Next one is 6 is greater than or equal to 2, which can be read as 6 is less than 2, or 6 is no less than 2. And last but not least, we would read that as negative 8 is not equal to negative 1. So here I would read this as x is less than or equal to 2. Think of some solutions to this inequality, basically numbers for x that will create a true statement. Now, how many solutions do you think there are? Well, let's take a look at a number line to see. Well, if you had a number line, I would say 1 is less than 2, 0 is less than 2. In fact, 2 is also less than or equal to 2, so that's going to work. All of these numbers are also less than 2, but some numbers in between are also less than 2. So 1.5, 1 3/4, for example, any of these numbers would actually be less than or equal to 2. So this graph represents all the solutions to the inequality. So notice there isn't just 1 or 2 or 3 answers. There's infinitely many. In fact, they will just exceedingly go towards the left of the number line. Here it says x is greater than negative 3. So on a number line, negative 2 is greater than negative 3. Negative 1 is greater than negative 3. 0 is greater than negative 3. All the numbers to the right are also greater than negative 3. This is also greater than negative 3. So it's about like negative 2.5. And keeping on, it's going to also be greater than 3. Now, notice there's an open circle on negative 3. Why is that? Because negative 3 isn't actually greater than negative 3. So I can't include that. And for those reasons, I'm going to go ahead and use an open dot. But anything to the right of that open dot is going to create a true statement for this inequality. So graphing inequalities, you're going to find less than or greater than is going to be an open circle, and less than or equal to or greater than or equal to will be represented by a closed circle. And again, that goes around, well, it's not going to include the number, so it has to stay open. But here, since it includes a number, it's going to go ahead and be filled in. So here, x is less than or equal to -1. So in this case, it's going to include -1, and because it's less than, it's going to include all the numbers to the left of it. Number 2, this is x is greater than 4. So we're not going to include 4 because 4 is not greater than 4. Now, because we're looking at all the numbers greater than, we're going to go to the right. So it says here, write an inequality that represents each word phrase and graph. So a number x is at most 3. So that's going to be x is less than or equal to 3. So graphically speaking, we're going to go ahead and include 3 because 3 is also less than or equal to 3. And because it's less than, we're going to include all the numbers to the left of the number line. Number 4, a number x is above -2. So this is going to be x is greater than -2. So notice it's not going to include it because -2 is not above -2. So on a number line, we're going to go ahead and use an open dot on -2. Since it's greater than, we're going to include all the numbers to the right. Now, just a quick thing to look at. For numbers 3 and 4 so far, you'll notice when we're looking at these as we're graphing it, we only really use 2 numbers, 0 and the number that they were referring to. So when you're trying to graph this quickly on a piece of paper, that's all you need. You need 0 to kind of give an idea where that fits in your number line, and you're going to want to use a number that they're referring to. That's it. You don't have to put all the additional tick marks in between. So for number 5, it says a number x is fewer than -4. So this is going to be x is less than -4. So again, on a number line, I'm just going to go ahead and use 0 and -4. That's it. Because -4 is not less than -4, it's not included. So I'm going to go ahead and use an open dot. And because it's less than, of course, we're going to have to go to the left. So now it says write an inequality that describes each graph below. So now they've given us a graph, and we're going to have to write the expression for, and we're going to write the inequality for the graphs here. So taking a look at number 6, because it's heading to the left, we're going to definitely be using the less than symbol, and because 2 is not filled in, it's not closed in, I'm going to say x is less than 2. Number 7, here, -1 is included and it's going towards the right, so I'm definitely going to use the greater than symbol. And because it's included, we're going to say greater than or equal to. So we're going to say x is greater than or equal to -1. Number 8, notice 0 is not included, so we're specifically going to be using, in this case, it's going to the right, the greater than symbol. So here, x is greater than 0. Now at this stage, I would like you to pause the video and try 9 through 11 by yourself. So let's quickly check our answers. Number 9 should be x is greater than -9. Number 10 is x is greater than or equal to 15. And number 11 should be x is less than or equal to -24. So just a quick reminder, it will be open if it doesn't include the equal symbol, but if it does include the equal symbol, we will fill in the circle. Well, guess what? That concludes the lesson for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, until next time, bye!